a little bit left to finish up with genderqueer. We have about 40 pages ahead of us, so not too much. We've already gone through the majority of it. As per usual, I scanned through the remaining portion. There won't be anything that I'll need to take the the window down for. This should all be at least from what I've seen, should all be completely fine to show to basically anyone, not withstanding content, subject matter. I don't know what's going to be discussed there, but we got that. I have. Oh, that's interesting. I had like this like weird mark on my teacup. I cleaned it off, but it's back. I wonder where it's coming from. Um, so that said, yes, I do have tea today. Hmm. Yeah, it just keeps reappearing. That's very strange. Magic. Have some tea, some chamomile tea. I love chamomile. It's nice too because no caffeine or anything like that. Wonder if it's cold enough to drink yet. Not quite, but that's it. Wasn't a problem or anything. As I said, just give people a moment to pile in if they like. I know some people have started following me. Some people aren't used to me being on Kick just yet, but we'll adjust and we'll get more people here. That said, I think we can get into things, and let's finish up this book. After we're done with it, maybe we'll talk about a couple of smaller stories that I wanted to get to, but I don't think would take that much time. So we'll see. We'll see what we feel like. See what we have time for. Let's get in. Let's get into things. All right. I gotta get the browser back on there. There we go. Cool. When last we left off, this is the end of the previous section. I call them sections like they're sectioned off like this in the book. They're not. It's just the site separates every 100 pages or so, which is nice as cutoff points for us, but the book isn't segmented in this way, and so that's why we get these weird weird places to leave off because the book isn't intended to be left off in this place. So last we left, the author was saying, I feel that was in conversation with a friend who suggested the book Touching a Nerve, Self as Brain by Patricia Churchland, PhD. And we got a little bit of a synopsis of who this person is. Analytical philosopher noted for her invention of neurophilosophy. Her credentials include Professor Emeritus at UC San Diego, Adjunct Professor at Salk Institute of Biological Studies, recipient of a MacArthur Fellowship, and Fellowship of the American Academy of Arts and Sciences. Pretty impressive. So now I imagine we're going to get into what that book has to say. So we have the cover there. In 2013, she published Touching a Nerve, which explores the questions: where in the physical structures of the brain are morality, empathy, aggression, free will, and identity based? I'm not sure that I like this question. I mean, obviously, if there's enough to write a book about, then I just need to know more about it. But the issue I take is not that it's a bad question necessarily, but there's an assumption built in here, right? That in the physical structures of the brain are these things. Maybe the idea is supposed to be that there is a part of our brain that handles subjects like morality, empathy, and aggression. It's just the implication here is just that like the way your brain is built will determine your views on morality, empathy, and aggression, things like that. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure that I like that assumption being built in. Just a nitpick. It's not super important, but trying to be honest about, I try to be honest about what I think about these things, so I'm letting you know. Reading Churchland is like listening to an engaging university lecture, I would imagine, with all those academic credentials. Normally, when a sperm fertilizes an egg, the resulting human conceptus has 23 pairs of chromosomes, either XX, genetic female, or XY, genetic male. This is an excerpt from the book. However, 1 in 650 born with XXY, Klinefelter syndrome. 1 in 1,000 are born with XYY. 1 in 5,000 are born with solo X, that's Turner syndrome, and 1 in 20,000 is born with XXYY. And if I'm not mistaken, there's also something where someone will be born with XY, but have like ovaries and female reproductive system. Don't quote me on that. I'd look into that before citing that. Churchland. This is another excerpt from the book, apparently, or at the very least, something mentioned in the book. In the early stages of development, the sex organs, gonads, of the fetus are neutral, but during the second month of fetal development, genes on the Y chromosome produce proteins that just transform the neural gonads into male testes. This is one of the things that comes up a decent amount in discussions of well, in trans discussions, is that p- biological essentialists will treat males and females like we're different species. Like there's no similarity whatsoever. We're completely different. It's so stark. It's night and day. But I mean, ultimately, babies are, or initially, or like humans, as fetuses, are initially neither male nor female, and there are hormone washes and proteins that affect how we develop. I don't know if it would be possible for like someone who as I understand it, it would be possible, but I'm not sure. For someone who had, for example, XY chromosomes, if they were not given the hormone washes expected with those chromosomes and instead had the hormone washes for XX, that they would develop as we would call it as a female. There's not that much of a difference, and uh, there's a lot of structures in the body that correlate between males and females because they're the same thing. They simply developed differently, and we see this mostly in genitalia. But like, I mean, men have nipples, right? Like this is that has, why is that there? Well, it's because we come from the same stuff. It's just nothing happened to activate the breast tissue to grow or something. This is why we also see every here and again, like we actually covered this a few weeks ago. We'll see sometimes trans women will start to lactate because now those hormones are present in their system and their bodies are developing in accordance and responding to these hormones. That's what our bodies do, is they react to hormones. Absent this action, the gonads grow into ovaries. Testosterone produced by the fetal testes is released into the bloodstream and enters the growing brain. Small but important correction. Once it passes from the blood into the brain, some testosterone is transformed by an enzyme into a more potent androgen, dihydrotestis. Oh, dihydrotestosterone. Okay. Oh, dihydrotestosterone. It sounds like with two hydrogen atoms is probably what that means. And some of that is changed into estradiol, which goes on to masculinize the brain. Paradoxical though it may seem, estradiol, a female hormone, is crucial into the masculinizing development. Biology is funny that way. Finally, the masculinizing of the gonads, making testes, penis, and prostate, occurs before the masculinizing of the brain. Sometimes the masculinizing of the brain does not follow the typical path and may be incomplete in various ways. You could have male genitalia and a female brain. So this kind of thing is where it might seem strange to someone. I actually just had a conversation with someone who disagreed with the notion that males and females are the same. But the thing is, I don't see anyone make that claim, and in fact, it's built into a lot of these discussions. There is an understanding that there is a difference in development, and understanding that there are changes that happen due to the hormones and proteins and all this stuff that go into your development. The argument is not that males and females are identical, but that they're not as stark. The lines aren't as stark as people seem to think they are. A lot of these things come in kind of nebulous ways. Nature doesn't work in binaries. And as Churchland is pointing out, you could have male genitalia and a quote unquote female brain. Like what I say quote unquote because like it's just a brain, right? We like it would be a male brain in that is held by a male, but it's a female brain in that it has the expected characteristics of someone who wasn't male, so on and so forth. These are categorization terms rather than distinct, like, oh, you can dig into the brain and find out, is someone really does someone really have a female brain or whatever. It's less like that and more categorization stuff. At least that's my understanding. And the author is considering all these terms: testosterone, dihydrotestosterone. I'm not going to go through all of them. They're big words. You can read them. I believe in you. You're smart, audience. I believe in you. Once we know something about the many factors, genetic and otherwise, that can alter the degree to which a brain is masculinized, it is a little easier to grasp a biological explanation for how a person might feel a disconnect between his or her gonads and his or her gender identity. A huge part of who I am is due to the suite of hormones and neurochemicals present in the womb as my cells developed. So Lady Gaga was right. I was born this way. What a relief. For what it's worth, even if you weren't born this way, that's that's fine. You don't have to be even if like you were even if you have a female brain, whatever, that means in its entirety, your identity is still valid. But I'm glad I found comfort in just being like in the notion that you were born this way. Glad that was helpful. But you don't need it. But you're you're perfectly normal and uh, perfectly legitimate, irrespective of whether you were born that way or not. In the summer of 2016, I tabled at the Queer Comics Expo in San Francisco. This is probably the safest place in the entire world to debut new pronouns. I just have to figure out how to bring it up. Later, I found Scout Trans pronoun patches at the Degenerate booth. Um, yeah, I think it's Degenerate booth. Okay, it's mixing degenerate and gender. You see they, them, ear, or air. I still don't know the pronunciation. I'm so sorry I'm messing it up. Wow, US Spivak. Or is it Spivak? I heard someone pronounce it Spivak since yesterday. It might be Spivak. What kind of joint would this be if we didn't stock the rare ones? I had to sit down with the patch in my hand for 20 minutes before I was able to put it on. Why is this so difficult? Surrounded by queer cartoonists in all directions. Later, while wearing it, Maya is the queen of cross-hatching. Say something, say something, say something. How do I correct someone's compliment without sounding like an asshole? Well, now it's too late anyway. The conversation has moved on. One thing that is a little unfortunate is just that while there are while there are terms that you can use without that are non-gendered for a lot of things, queen and king, there isn't like, I guess the closest is monarch, but it feels a little different in context. It has a different connotation, at least to my mind, as queen or king. It is a little unfortunate that's not there. Maybe we shouldn't have royalty. Maybe that would help. Shortly after, at an art opening, do you know Maya? She graduated in 2015. E graduated, but just thinking it. A person I was trying to network with, someone I knew in undergrad, wearing my pronoun patch. Ooh, while wearing the pronoun patch, yeah, that's definitely a faux pas. She draws comics. E draws comics. She has a master's degree, but no courage, apparently. I found myself turning to metaphors of mild physical pain as I tried to articulate why I wanted new pronouns. Female pronouns didn't bother me when I was younger, but now they do. I know switching isn't easy, but please try. And that's really all that people are asking. Just try. Just try to do better. Try to respect what people's wishes. Just don't be a dick. It's kind of that easy, actually. But some people manage to, no matter how low the bar, some people manage to limbo under it. Getting called she feels like discovering a rock stuck in my shoe, or getting scratched by the tag at the back of my shirt. A small spike of solvable discomfort. Where are the scissors? Also in 2016, Ashley and I were invited to sign at a publisher's booth at Comic Con for the first time. Oh, that's awesome. Getting things set up. You ladies are missing your name tags. I'll get them for you. Wince. Oh no, I didn't tell them anything about my pronoun. Here you go. Say something, something, say something. Thank you. It happened again. Do you ladies need anything? Wince. No, thank you. Why didn't I say something the first time? It happened a third time. I'm so glad you ladies could be here. But wince. Will I ever be able to stand up for myself? I hate being called ladies. Me too. Why didn't you say anything? At first it was because I didn't want to seem rude. And then, after I didn't speak up the first time, it felt like I'd given up my right to say anything. This is also pretty common with people, and it's been noted by much smarter people than me, that when given a choice between doing the right thing, and doing the same thing you've already been doing, a lot of people will choose just doing the same thing. In this case, are not standing up for themselves in this case. But in other cases, it's stuff like being okay with increasing marginalization. You already we're okay with this level of bigotry. So, when we step it up, it's easier to just keep going along with it. This always happens. I just freeze and I can't make myself speak up. I just don't know how to explain myself. Make a comic about it. Phoebe and Amila came to stay in winter 2016 on Christmas Eve. We have a present we wanted you to open before tomorrow. Wow, a binder. Wait, two binders? Thank you, thank you. In January, I wore a binder to work for the first time. It feels very good to wear it, but also feels very good to take it off. Itchy. Wearing a binder for too long makes me feel like I need to shed out of my skin. As seniors in high school, I remember all of my classmates planning what tattoos they wanted as soon as they turned 18. I want a moon on my wrist. I'm getting my zodiac sign. I too had a future tattoo picked out. A small Tolkien dragon. I wanted it on my forearm. A decade later, I am still tattoo free. At 28, I daydream not of tattoos, but of top surgery. My parents are getting a little better with my pronouns, but they still slip up. Is she coming? E is coming. Look, she's up. E's up. Why are you doing this to us? Just think of it as exercise to keep your brain agile and sharp. Better than Sudoku. Later, I know she said that in a moment of frustration. She's actually trying really hard, but it still hurt a little. Yeah, I get that. Like, to the mom it feels like an imposition, but, I mean, they're just trying to advocate for themselves sorry, for themselves, and to be treated the way, and to ask for the treatment they'd prefer. That's all it is. The first time I saw myself referred to as E as in a work email, I experienced a startling wave of joy. And you can see how much it matters to him. Ring. Hello? Hello, I'm calling from Kaiser about a pap smear exam. Fuck. Look, I really don't want to have another PAPS exam. Kaiser recommends that you have one every 3 years. And according to our records, your last one was over 5 years ago. I am very, very well aware. Have you been sexually active since your last appointment? Yes. Can I schedule you for an exam on the 26th? I guess so. Great, I'll email a reminder. God damn it. I dressed very carefully the day of my exam, even though I knew I would shortly be removing all of my clothes. Breathe, breathe, breathe. Pronoun pin, a flannel from Goodwill over a t-shirt from the internet, pants from the men's section over boys' briefs, Converse over favorite socks. It can't be as bad as last time. It can't possibly be as bad as last time. Spoiler, it was worse. Oh no. Maya, coming. Please change into the robe. Your doctor will be here in a few minutes. Okay. Sees the table. Clearly uncomfortable. Breathe, breathe. Hello, I'll be doing your exam today. Hello. I have a few things I want to explain before the exam. Okay. I identify as gender non-binary and I use pronouns EM, EM, I think that's how it is. I have a lot of gender dysphoria around my genitals, and I've been actively avoiding this exam for years. I'm really nervous. Thank you for telling me. And it's great. Like, he can advocate for himself, and at the very least, give the doctor an idea of like, okay, and starting to, at the very least from what we've seen, ask for the appropriate pronouns. I'm going to use the smallest size of speculum and go as quickly as I can, alright? Okay. The speculum entering my body felt like a knife being shoved into my vagina. I screamed and immediately started sobbing. The doctor quickly withdrew. I think this would be easier if you took a pain medication and maybe an anti-anxiety pill first. I'm going to write you a prescription and make you a new appointment, okay? Sniff, sniff, okay. I'll leave it so you can get dressed, but I'll see you again in 2 weeks. Yeah. I caught sight of the speculum as I shakily got dressed. It was bloody. At the pharmacy, I received 5 mg of a 5 mg dose of oxycodone and a 1 mg of lorazepam. Then I went home. How did it go? It didn't. Can you drive me to a new appointment in 2 weeks? Of course. Hug? Yeah. And this is a small thing, but it comes up a lot. How easy is it to just be like, hey, do you want a hug before hugging someone? This is what like people get bent out of shape about, like they're taught my kid that I need consent before I give them a hug, but they're my kid. Just be like, hey, can I give you a hug? And it's your kid. They'll probably be like, yeah, okay. How hard is that? My memories of the second appointment are hazy. I took the pills about an hour before we left the house. The doctor was able to complete the exam. My mom drove me home. I threw up in the bathroom. I crawled into bed and slept for 5 or 6 hours. You can see like how painful this is for him. A few weeks later, I received a very short letter from my doctor. The results of my examination were normal, nothing to report. I'm just blank. Just I don't know. This panel just has this overwhelming feeling of just nothingness. You can hear the quiet kind of thing. I think it's interesting, right? In spring 2017, I attended a march for trans rights in my middle-sized liberal hometown. I knew we'd be walking, so I dressed for comfort. There was a chance of rain, so I carried a raincoat. When I arrived, it seemed like everyone had dressed up except me. Well, that's not really true, I don't think. I mean, I get where you're coming from. I don't want to argue. I just mean to say you're dressed up too in the way that you want to be seen, and which is very seems to be very low on gender, right? Very minimal gender presentation. Whereas these other people, the way they want to be seen, has more gender signifiers involved and um, more like I don't know how to put it, more dressed up, as you would say. But you are too. It's just different, and that's okay. I feel like a total square right now. Why didn't I wear something cool? You did. All right. I just like I don't know. Throughout the course of this book, I'm just like I feel so much for the author. I'm like, no, you're doing great. You're doing great, kiddo. You got this. I'm saying kiddo. We're the same age. Presuming I had an age, which I don't because I am of infinite age. In which case, everyone's a kiddo. We saved it. We got there. I don't want to spend this year looking straight, but how do I look more queer, specifically more genderqueer? I love florals, I love colors, but all I own are jeans and t-shirts in boring solid colors. How did I end up with a wardrobe of a bland teenage boy? All right, you're calling me out, and I don't appreciate it. All right, I didn't ask for this. I thought we were cool. What happened? I want to define myself by what I am instead of what I am not. That's great. What would I wear if money were no object? Well, that's easy. Alexander McQueen in some very stylish outfits. Um, as it happens, Amazon Kane's in the room, so I'm trying to be like, hey, do you want to see these outfits? I know you'll like them, so I'm giving her a chance to lean over. She's like,
howdy, stream.
There she is. Uh, oh, she was not quite on stream. Yep, there she
Hi,
is.
guys.
It's real. Thanks for letting me clout shark off of you. I really appreciate it. But I hope you like the outfits.
I do.
And that's why she's not in my chat, because she's in my room. I guess just not the chat room. In an effort to achieve the high fantasy gay wizard prince look of my dreams, I began giving myself strict shopping guidelines. Going to Boss, definitely not Ross, going to Boss, dress for a quest. No t-shirts, no solid colors. I'm only looking at clothes that Taco would consider. I don't know who that is. Today I'm looking for things that remind me of Johnny Weir, Forever 29. Would Harry Styles wear this shirt? Slowly I began to collect things that felt queer and magical. Oh, that's great. I'm glad you're enjoying that. Approximately actual size. Oh, well, I guess it would be in the book, but we're looking at it on a screen. It's probably zoomed in, but drawn to size in the book if you were to acquire the book and then see it as the size that it is there. These gently chime as I walk. Oh, that's kind of cool, like a wind chime earrings. Neat. An owl backpack. That's cute. These days, every time I wear a floral out of the house, it feels like a small but meaningful victory. Well, that's great. More power to you. Look how happy. Look how happy. That's great. My family recently welcomed the first baby into our generation. I can't get over how small he is. Wow, my cousin Josh, his wife Faith. his wife, Faith. Yeah. We were wondering what he should call you once he grows up. I don't know a good gender-neutral term for aunt. Can I be his librarian or cartoonist? uh, Maybe by the time he learns to talk, we'll have invented some new words. Thank you so much for the email about your pronouns. I am proud to be part of your family, and I'm grateful that he will grow up knowing you. Oh, that's sweet. That means the world to me. Yeah, that's adorable. Sweet and wholesome and super cute. Uh, oh, I just noticed you in chat, Chemgal. I didn't notice. Hello, hi back. Do you write on Substack? I don't. I actually have never been on Substack. Only ever heard of it. I'm not 100% sure what it is. Uh, I'm wondering why you asked. Do I remind you of someone that you've seen there? But no, I don't. In the fall of 2017, I started teaching single-day comics workshops to junior high kids at local libraries. Give me one second, actually. I'll double check something. Oh, okay. You can use as many or as few panels as you would like for the next assignment, but remember, drawing comics with Michael Bumey. In comics, space affects time. That's so true. I mean, I wouldn't have thought to put words to it. You know, I'm not an artist by any stretch. But yeah, very good. Yeah, the slow motion. If you just have more panels, I have each group for just 3 hours. I pack in as much as I can. Every time I get ready to meet a new group of students, I wonder, should I introduce myself to this batch using my pronouns? Yeah, you should. I wish I didn't fear that my identity is too political for a classroom. Yeah, that's kind of an issue, right? You're just you, but somehow being you is political, and that's the actual problem, right? Not that you want specific pronouns for yourself, not that you identify as non-binary or genderqueer. The problem is that that's seen as weird and political and like a statement. You're just being you. Why can't we just let you be you? My time with these students is so short. It's starting Is starting with a potentially confusing topic like pronouns a good use of that time? So far, I've always decided it isn't. You know, standing up, asking for how you'd like to be treated is always a good use of time. During the snack break of a recent class, a mom came up to me. My daughter loves to draw. I'm so glad she's getting to see a female artist role model. When I was a girl, I had no role models who looked like me. There were no women doctors, no professors, no CEOs. I wanted to say, I never saw role models like myself either. I didn't even meet another non-binary person until grad school. But I feared that the truth would ruin her moment. I kept quiet. Oh, I'm sorry. The kids I teach are primarily AFAB, and they range in age from 11 to 14. Whisper, chat, haha, dot giggle. Those were my first big years of gender confusion, but I doubt anyone would have guessed just by looking at me. Looking around my class today, I was going to say something, but I knew that the next panel definitely is going to say it exactly here. I wonder if any of these kids are trans or non-binary, but don't have words for it yet. How many of them have never seen a non-binary adult? Is my silence actually a disservice to all of them? This is the value of representation, right? People say representation matters when you see a trans person in a movie and they're just they like a character like everyone else. That representation normalizes and shows people, yeah, people are like you. You can see that, and that's valuable. That's heartening. It's also why the right hates it, because they know it's normalizing. It shows people that they're normal and that they're not weird or different, and they don't have to change, which is what bigots tend to want. But this stuff matters, and it's important to have role models for people, as we already saw previously. Goodbye, take care, keep drawing comics. Thank you, bye. Having a non-binary or trans teacher in junior high would have meant the world to me. Every time I fail to give my pronouns, I feel like a coward. But coming out can still be really scary, even after all this time. Could a parent complain and get me fired? God, maybe, and I'm really sorry that that's the concern, right? Like, this has happened all over the place. There was, in fact, extremely famous episode of a show called All in the Family from, was it 70s or 80s? It was the 70s, where there was a character who was gay, and like one of the concerns was if she was outed, like she would lose her job as a teacher and all this other stuff, and so she had to keep that part of herself quiet, and it meant all these things. And it was a really memorable episode because this show is coming out and saying like, "Hey, gay people are part of the family too." There's a great video by Matt Baum. Thank you. You notice I was looking for the name. I appreciate you feeling that. That was yeah, great video by Matt Baum about it. It's very very interesting. But yeah, it sucks that that's a concern. That's a worry. Their kids only have me for one day. If the parents hate me, they never have to see me again. And I think the administration would support me. I think I'm carrying more fear than I need. Yeah. Next time, next time, I will come out. And that's where the book ends, leaving us off looking to the future, which I think is great. Because remember, this person's life isn't over. Air's still living. They're still going through. Sorry, I misspoke. Air's still going through different hardships and having more experiences. And this is just a glimpse into what air life is like and what it looked like. A note to my parents. Though I have struggled with being your daughter, I am so, so glad that I am your child. That's really sweet. So there we have it. We've finished the totality of the book. I think it ended well, though I think the thing that was most poignant to me came prior. I've mentioned this before, but it was page 186, which I should be able to find. So it's 175. We still got a little ways to go. 186, as I recall, was, I think, the heart of the book and what it all. And I think you could, this book could speak for itself in just this one page, given we were brought into the author's experience prior. How would I help support a young person who came to me with the same feelings I have about gender? Obviously, I would listen and believe them. I'd ask that if they wanted to do some level of social transition. If the kid hadn't hit puberty yet, I'd say try hormone blockers, but it's too late for that for me, sadly. I already have short hair, and I've been wearing non-gender specific clothes for years. I don't want to change my name, but I like the idea of changing pronouns. Most of this comes from the first panel where I say it's the heart of the book, but obviously like it leads into suggestions of political ramifications of like maybe this is how we should look at how we should approach the idea that the fact that there are trans kids, like how do we do that? Try with social transition, then maybe puberty blockers if appropriate, all this other stuff. But this first line is important, right? Clearly this book has a lot to say about non-binary identity, what that experience can be like, what the author's experience was like, and focuses a lot on feeling alone. Maybe not put in those terms, but feeling different and not understanding the experience he was having, I think that's valuable. However, I've come to the conclusion pretty clearly. Oh, I didn't realize I wasn't showing that panel. It's not a big deal. Pretty clearly, this book is not really appropriate for kids. Maybe a particularly mature, like 11th or 12th grader, something like that. Approaching adulthood. But there's a decent amount of stuff in here where it's pretty clear. It's just not appropriate for younger people. I do wish there was. Maybe there is, but like it would be nice to have a book with a similar message, but more age-appropriate content for people around the age the author was when he said he was having these experiences at the outset, which, as I recall, was like 11 to 13, 11 to 14, somewhere in there. And there should be a version of that doesn't of this story, this message that someone of that age would be appropriate. It would be appropriate for someone of that age to read. But ultimately, no, I don't think this is appropriate for kids. That said, part of why we went over this, and part of why we were reading this in the first place, part of why we were asking the question, was because the question never mattered. And that's something I've just kind of been hiding since we started. Maybe I mentioned it in passing, but this question never actually mattered. Ultimately, as much as people will pretend that the reason this book was banned in so many school districts was because of the graphic content, I think is a cover. And I think it's a bit of a misstep of the author if he intended for this book to have any sort of outreach, to have that kind of material, because this would be a much easier subject to talk about. And I don't blame the author for this, right? Air relating their story, like, that's what it is, and it's going to involve what it involves. Maybe it was never intended for kids. I don't really know. But without that content, it would have been clear that the people who generally oppose the book take issue with is that it's talking about a gender non-binary experience. It's talking about a more accepting, less rigidly binary, less um, less cis-normative view of the world. And that's the real issue. However, because of the graphic content, it gives cover to people like, I've seen Tim Pool talk about this. There was another streamer mention this on this platform, actually. It can take issue with the graphic content, even, and avoid the question of what the message of the book is. Now, with the creator on this platform, I think it is legitimate. Like, I think he's not covering anything. But with someone like Tim Pool, I do think that it's like decently likely the issue isn't actually with anything graphic. It's with the subject matter, with the material, that it's accepting of non-binary and experience, and potentially helpful to people who are going through that themselves and looking to relate through this book to the author who can help them along. And part of why I say that the question never mattered is also in part, look at the fact that it was banned. How many books are inappropriate for children? I would argue most of them. Most books are inappropriate for most children of most ages. And even just something as simple as, like, maybe it discusses something that's a little beyond their ability to grasp. Like, Don Quixote is a book I tried reading when I was in high school. I think it was fine for me to try reading it then. As far as what I remember having read, there wasn't anything inappropriate for me in high school. But if I tried to read it when I was in third grade, that would have been a little inappropriate. Just because, like, I'm not going to be able to like grasp what's going on. That said, I didn't finish, but I do remember the beginning being way funnier than you'd think it would be, already knowing what the joke is. But it was banned, in all likelihood, because people were scared of it infecting their kids with non-binary, whatever. It didn't need to be banned. It wasn't on the school curriculum. Why would it be? Was it in the school library? If it is in high school libraries and there's a decent amount of, like, in a section that might be like, hey, maybe like the more mature kids can handle this, but obviously not like a ninth grader. I don't think it was, but if it was, is that a problem? Maybe not. And let's be real, if the school district was willing to ban this book, there's no chance they're buying it to put in the school libraries, right? Like, that seems pretty clear. But it's banned. Um, One thing I want to check, and we'll go on this journey together. Is the Turner Diary banned in any school districts? Can't spell though. Okay, we'll see if is there a list of banned from school libraries. Is there just a list? Okay. Okay, go away. All right. So the ALA Office for Intellectual Freedom records attempts to remove books from library schools and universities. These titles are books on the Radcliffe Publishing Course top 100 novels of the 20th century that have been banned. Okay, this isn't a full list. What I want is just a list of books that have been banned. Well, we can even look at the top 50. Uh, hmm. Oh, that's interesting. Okay, I've already found what I want to. Number 50, Antango Makes Three. A children's book on the real life story of two male chinstrap penguins who formed a bond at the Central Park Zoo in New York City. And after the zookeeper saw the pair trying to hatch a rock as if it were an egg, they gave the penguin couple their own egg and they raised the chick as their own. This is number 50 on this list. The Turner Diaries isn't on the list. If you're unfamiliar, the Turner Diaries is a no joke white supremacist book that inspired the Oklahoma City bombing. If you want to know more about it, there's a phenomenal video by Thought Slime on YouTube about the subject. I think it's called like the most hateful book ever written or something, or like the Nazi Bible, or something like that is the title of the video. That book is not banned, but why? That book is highly inappropriate for kids uh, of any age. It's highly inappropriate generally. But books like Genderqueer and Entango Makes Three are on here. Because obviously. Number one, by the way, the most banned book, apparently, is this one. But the Turner Diaries doesn't make the top 50. The reason has absolutely nothing to do with the graphic content. There are sex scenes in the Turner Diaries, by the way. Now, they're terribly written because it's written by a Nazi. Of course it's terribly written. They're not very smart people. But notice how many of these books, as I'm just rolling through them, are by queer or queer people, people of color, having to do with oppression. The Kite Runner is banned. That's really interesting. I actually read this book. This is challenging as a book, but I read it in high school. I could handle it. I'm not going to say that I speak for everybody, but it is at the very least possible for a high school kid to handle this book, even though it is, as I say, challenging and kind of graphic. This book is gay. This is another one where I'd have to know the context because I know this is another one that gets brought up as like, oh, this is like TOS or whatever. But notice how many of these books have to do with queer identity or have to do with the experiences of people of color. Oh, The Handmaid's Tale. That's interesting. But the Turner Diaries doesn't make the list. And if we want to talk about what's inappropriate, obviously we've talked about this prior. Literally, the New Testament is way worse than anything we saw in Genderqueer, but it'll never be banned, right? The reason for the banning has nothing to do with the contents, has everything to do with the subject material, and the contents were the excuse. And this is why I wanted to go over it. Look through it, come to our own conclusion, and then go, but why is it banned? If it were sitting in a school library that my kid was going to, maybe I'd want that library be pretty good about, in general. I guess even if this book wasn't sitting in the library, I'd want the library to be pretty good about monitoring who's checking out what books, making sure it's appropriate and all this stuff. Because again, there are books that are going to be appropriate for a 17-year-old that aren't appropriate for a 14-year-old, but they're both going to the same school, right? It gets more exacerbated when you have a K through 12 school where a 7-year-old is in the same school with a 17-year-old, and what's appropriate for each is wildly different. But does it need to be banned? I don't think so. And I'm glad we went through to find out, like, yeah, it's probably inappropriate. But it wasn't banned because it was inappropriate. It was banned because it was about queer stuff. So I hope it was valuable to everyone watching who's watched through the small series. I quite enjoyed the book. I think it had a lot to say, and obviously I am significantly older than high school age, and I got a lot out of it. So for older audiences, it definitely has a lot to say, and the comic format is particularly accessible. That it was, if it wasn't in comic form, we probably wouldn't have read it. This Book is Gay is probably one we're not going to read. It's a bit much to read through a full book on stream, but Genderqueer was more accessible because of the format. And I think it was pretty moving in many instances, even if it's inappropriate for kids, such as it is. What do you think, chat? Anyone hanging out? Is there you want to add anything before we switch topics? Nope. All right. Give me one moment. I want to double check something. Okay. So now let's move on. There were a couple of things I wanted to talk about, and I probably should have pulled these up ahead of time, but I was kind of busy with other stuff. There are a few stories that I wanted to talk about. The first has to do with someone who's crossed our path before. A little guy you might have heard of, named Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Now, he came up to us in the context of discussing vaccine misinformation, because that's the thing he does. That's his thing. That's what he's about. That's his whole thing. But he sparked some controversy recently, and by recently I mean literally 3 days ago, maybe 4, with a particular brand of vaccine misinformation. Now, he's also particularly relevant here because he's not just a whack job. He's also a presidential candidate. He's primarying Joe Biden, which I think is extremely harmful, as we have talked about prior. He's not a particularly serious candidate, but even if he were, at the moment, it's just kind of important that we don't elect a fascist. And if the incumbent president is running, you're unlikely to successfully primary him. I don't think that's ever really happened. Maybe it has. I don't know. But you do weaken the platform. That's a matter of strategy, not a matter of ethics, I suppose. Unless you consider that you consider that there can be ethical strategies and unethical ones. It's besides the point. Let's get to the story. I won't spoil what we're about to get into. Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. dished out wild COVID-19 conspiracy theories this week during a press event at an Upper East Side restaurant, claiming the bug was a genetically engineered bioweapon that may have been ethnically targeted to spare Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people. There it is. Do we need to read more? We will. But yeah, spouting off the claim that it was designed, one, that the disease was in fact, a bioweapon and not an emergent disease that came about. Not only that it was a bioweapon, but also that it was designed to spare Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese people, leading to the obvious question of, why would it be engineered that way? Obviously, it wasn't. This is nonsense. Let's be clear. I'm not going to tolerate any uncertainty in this regard. This is nonsense, and it's racist nonsense, and we'll get into that as we continue. Kenny floated the idea during a question and answer portion of a raucous booze and fart-filled diner at Tony's Di Napoli on East 63rd Street. COVID-19, there is an argument that is ethnically targeted. COVID-19 attacks certain races disproportionately, Kennedy said. COVID-19 is targeted to attack Caucasians and black people. The people who are most immune are Ashkenazi Jews and Chinese. We don't know whether it was deliberately targeted or not, but there are papers out there that show the racial or ethnic differential and impact, Kennedy hedged. So this is the classic backpedal. I said something way too mask off of like, oh yeah, it's the Jews and the Chinese that are engineering a bioweapon. They're coordinating an attack on America by attacking white people through their virus. Like that's what he's saying, right? And he dials it back of like, well, we don't know, but like it disproportionately affects. Maybe it disproportionately affects different people because there are cultural differences. Uh, in East Asia, there's already and a cultural expectation that when you're sick you wear a mask to protect other people. Before COVID, this was already a thing. That goes a long way when a virus comes along that masks are pretty effective at reducing the spread of. Maybe that's why they weren't affected as much. Or maybe more people in America were affected because our policies were so terrible. In particular, the areas that seem most affected are people who are not vaccinated, which tend to be Republican voters who tend to be white. There's a lot of stuff that goes into this that is 100% cultural, but he's out here floating the idea that it was a bioweapon designed by the Chinese in Congress with or in conspiracy with the Jews to attack white people in the United States. Like that's basically what he just said, even though he'll never admit to it. And this guy is allegedly on the left in American politics. I don't believe he is. He is a nut job, a clearly right-wing nut job by his vehement racism, which is pretty right-wing. People can argue with me about this, but it is. Who's here as a spoiler candidate. But we can proceed. In between bites of linguine, okay, all these ads. In between bites of linguine and clam sauce, Kennedy, 69, nice, warned of more dire biological weapons in the pipeline with a 50% infection fatality rate that would make COVID-19 look like a walk in the park. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds. Oh, this is a quote. This is a quote. We do know that the Chinese are spending hundreds of millions of dollars developing ethnic bioweapons. We know that? We know that. Do we? I don't think we do. And are developing and we are developing ethnic bioweapons, he claimed. They are collecting Russian DNA. Oh, this is a long this is a bit of an older a slightly older conspiracy that like the Ukrainians are engineering viruses to and weapons to attack ethnically Russian people in their illegitimate war of defense. Like it's more conspiracy garbage. They're collecting Chinese DNA so we can target people by race. There has been a growing consensus among U.S. intelligence agencies that COVID-19 was man-made and escaped from a lab in Wuhan, China. But there is no evidence that it was designed to spare certain religious groups or ethnicities, and Kennedy offered no studies to support his claims. Obviously, right? Obviously, can I say this is obvious? Is anyone going to contest how obvious that is? And obviously he's not correct, and obviously he's not going to support show any studies because obviously no one is going to agree with this obviously false claim. Incidentally, I had a family member some previously suggest to me that the COVID-19 virus was man-made and escaped from a lab, and I found as I was trying to argue with her that there are in fact studies saying there is evidence that it is natural. Not just that there's no evidence to support the claim, but there's evidence to say the opposite, that it was not developed in a lab. Kennedy's remark echoes well-worn anti-Semitic literature blaming Jews for the emergence and spread of coronavirus, which began circulating online shortly after the pandemic broke out, according to the Center for the Study of Contemporary European Jewry at the University of Tel Aviv's 2021 Anti-Semitism Worldwide Report. This is an issue I have with a lot of modern journalism. This sentence is way too long, and also every sentence is a new paragraph. Just break it up. This is long and clunky. How but it's news speak. And by the way, the the claim that like Jews are poisoning the wells and bringing plague and whatever. This isn't like, oh, just a COVID-19 thing. This is like a centuries old thing. This is exceptionally old anti-Semitism. A 2020 Oxford University study found that nearly 1 in 5 British people believe Jews created the coronavirus pandemic for financial gain. No, 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 said Dr. Monica Gandhi, professor of medicine and infectious disease at the University of California, San Francisco, and a longtime critic of pandemic-related school closures. I don't see any evidence that there was any design or bioterrorism that anyone tried to design something to knock off certain groups. Jewish organizations blasted Kennedy for his remarks. Obviously. This is crazy, said Morton Klein, president of the right-leaning Zionist Organization of America. It makes no sense that they would do that. I read everything. I was totally against the vaccine. I wanted to convince myself it was correct not to take it. I've never seen anything like this. I don't even know what the value of this quote is, but yeah, like, okay, sure. Klein, who said he had been advising Kennedy on Israel issues and called him a good friend, said the remark left him worried. The son of former Attorney General Robert Kennedy and the nephew of former President Kennedy has in the past palled around with Nation of Islam leader and notorious anti-Semite Louis Farrakhan. By the way, it's like a foundational belief in, at the very least, Farrakhan's worldview, if not the Nation of Islam, that like of anti-Semitism. So like, yes, palling around with him is a big deal. He's not incidentally an anti-Semite. It's at the core of his belief system. And if you don't believe me, you can look into it. He also met with NOI leadership in Los Angeles 2020 and told them the COVID vaccine had been genetically modified to attack black and Latino boys. Some more like race baiting or whatever. The left-leaning Anti-Defamation League went further, saying in a statement, need some editing here. The claim that COVID-19 was a bioweapon created by the Chinese or Jews to attack Caucasians and black people is deeply offensive and feeds into xenophobic and anti-Semitic conspiracy theories about COVID-19 that we have seen evolve over the last 3 years. So I want to take a pause here, because unfortunately, this is what is a likely response to this is the kind of thing we've seen frequently, where someone will make a claim where obviously, there's no way he's talking about anything other than that claim, right? But he is putting it in a way where he has like, no, I just said it happens to be, and I backed it up, but obviously, this is the position, and like people heard him, heard the actual message. It's not like the people who were conspiracizing were like, oh, well, he backed it up, so I don't believe that now. But he gets to say, well, I didn't say that. Yes, you did. Yes, you did, right? Like, why else? Again, you're implying it without saying it, but obviously there's no reason to say what you did other than the conclusion that people are drawing from it. Jordan Peterson does this all the time, too. He'll say something, the implication of which is obvious. You'll argue against the implication, and he'll be like, I never said that. Well, no, you didn't. But why else did you say what you said? So I'd be very interested to know what RFK says the purpose behind that statement was. Kennedy's campaign has drawn in disaffected elements of both the right and left, seeking an alternative to mainstream candidates. Some polls have shown him garnering 20% support among primary voters. This is what I meant about, like, this is tactically bad. We're going to see. Nope. There's just... All right. This is more harmful for the left than the right, because if he pulls support from both sides, people on the right weren't going to vote for Biden anyway. But people on the left, like, not voting for him will will add to the chances that a Republican candidate wins, which is again the people being presented at the moment are literal fascists. Kennedy called the posts mistaken, tweeting Saturday that the event had been off the record. So what? What? Like, if it's off the record, so you're like, no, you're not supposed to write down the bigoted things I say. But event organizer Doug Detchert told the Post it was on the record. A second event attendee, just like willingness to lie to your face again. We've already seen that when it comes to vaccine stuff, but all right. A second event attendee confirmed to the Post Deckert told him the same thing. The U.S. and other governments are developing ethnically targeted bioweapons, and that a 2021 study of the COVID-19 virus shows that COVID-19 appears to disproportionately affect certain races. Kennedy tweeted, reiterating his mark from the dinner. So he's doubling down. Like, he's okay. So you believe, yeah. The only thing that he's walked back on a little bit here is that he's leaving open the possibility that COVID-19 specifically wasn't an ethnically targeted bioweapon, but it might be, according to him, right? It's not, but he's floating that claim out there with less than the requisite amount of plausible deniability to get away with it, but attempting exactly that. The Furin-Cleve docking site is the most compatible with blacks, Caucasians, and least compatible with ethnic Chinese, Finns, and Ashkenazi Jews. Oh, we're adding in Finns now. In that sense, it serves as a kind of proof of concept for ethnically targeted bioweapons. Again, there are reasons I'm not educated enough to know why like to get into like the science about this, but like we could already suggest reasons that different groups were affected differently without having to do any of this racist shit. I also want to note his method of reference, right? It's not black people, it's blacks. It's not white people, it's Caucasians, it's Chinese, it's Jews. This is something that people often like write off because a lot of people sometimes speak this way, but like let's be real, most people don't say blacks unless they're pretty racist or they're making fun of people doing the same. Thinking in these terms where you're just like the blacks and the Jews and the Chinese, like it's essentialist kind of racialized thinking that is built into the way he approaches the world. I do not believe and never implied that the ethnic effect was deliberately engineered. He did. He added clarifying words. No, you did. That's a lie. I. That's such a weird place for this article to leave off. Like what? Why would you stop here? But like, you did. It's right here. He said what? What exactly? I do not believe and never implied. You implied it right here. Do you want to go over it? You said you said oh no, there's an argument as to ethnically targeted. That's an implication. So to anyone who liked this guy, just understand what you're getting into. This guy he's pretty racist. And I think being appropriately rebuffed for this statement and this view. So that's one minor story. The other one has to do with Hunter Biden. And I know, it's tiring. Actually, let's... All right. Give me 1 second, because this is actually a response to I was in another streamer's chat where this subject came up, and I think I'm better able to express my thoughts on the matter out loud than through that text. So I want to like let him know that I'm about to discuss it in case he wants to pop in. So give me 1 second. Just one moment. All right. I just shot him a message. I don't know if that's inappropriate or not. I know there's like a lot of I know there's a lot of like etiquette regarding DMs and stuff with creators, but I'm new to this, so I'm figuring that out. So I just sent him a message. I'll give him a moment just in case he is interested in hearing what I have to say about it, because we seem to disagree, though probably not as much as you might think hearing that explanation. Um, Basically, the story as I understand it is that cocaine was found in the White House. It's likely, it is suspected that it's likely the property of Hunter Biden, who is the son of the president, not a member of the government, as a note, very important to my mind, but we'll get to that. Not in government, and is known for doing cocaine, sleeping with prostitutes, so on, etc. As I understand it, the cocaine also mysteriously went missing, and there's a lot of fervor on the right about, like, oh, look at this, he's getting away with stuff, obviously saying things like the Biden crime family, so on, etc. And I saw some sentiment that it seemed like some sentiment of disappointment that the left wasn't that interested in this, didn't seem to care all that much. And so I got into a conversation with a streamer, and tried to express why I don't really care that much. And I think I can do better here. So the first point is, well, isn't there an issue of like people with power getting away with crimes? Yes, absolutely. And the left cares about that deeply, including the people that we were watching on that stream that day. But when people on the left talk about this stuff, we care about it broadly. We'll say, yeah, in any instance where a person with power, you know, causes harm, breaks the rules, so on and so forth, they should be held to account for that. This is why you have movements for things like police accountability. This is why people wanted Trump impeached, and not just impeached, but removed from office for the thing he very obviously did. Why there is support for his prosecution, so on and so forth. It appears as hypocritical to people because it is presented as such by dishonest people drumming up hysteria about nonsense claims. There was, if you remember when we went over the Trump speech when he was in New Jersey, an implication that Joe Biden, the actual president, had possibly received some bribes or other. And they say, oh, look how hypocritical, you don't care. Except we do care. As anyone who was watching me at the time remembers, or if you want to go back and check, my response was, if there's literally any credible evidence, it should be investigated. If it is determined that this is what happened, he should be impeached, removed from office, prosecuted, and I don't know if what the punishment would be, probably imprisonment, but punished, because that's unacceptable. So I ask, what hypocrisy is there? There isn't. Only by implication is there. However, this sentiment is not shared equally between different actors on different sides of the political aisle. The people who are going nuts about this cocaine story in the White House do not care whatsoever about people in power getting away with crimes. They like it. They want to do it, as evidenced by the fact that they will cry about the son of the president who is not in government doing cocaine but will say nothing about the former president, now former president, seeking out and soliciting bribes from foreign powers in exchange for political favors. They didn't care about that. Not they didn't think it was real. They said they didn't think it was real. But there was no interest whatsoever in finding out if it was real before moving on. So now I'm asked, in situations like this, to care about this Hunter Biden cocaine thing. Why? They don't care. Why should I care? Maybe I should care because of the principles that I hold to. Well, I do care in that regard, and that's why I advocate for that broadly. But this would be like if you approached a climate activist and said, "Hey, that guy is driving and like driving a diesel car or whatever. Don't you care about that specifically?" And you go like, "Yeah, I guess." But my advocacy is broader than that. And to focus on this to the exclusion of everything else is nonsense. Why should I let myself be distracted? Instead, I say, this is a symptom of a greater problem. That said, it's also not a big deal. Like, people on the left tend not to care that much about drug charges nearly as much. There's people who will argue for like full drug decriminalization, including cocaine. One of the arguments, in fact, that the streamer made was like, oh, his dad put people in prison for like 10 years through like the crime bill and whatever. Yeah, the problem there was the crime bill, the drug war, not the cocaine usage. So why would I care about the cocaine usage? I think cocaine use is cocaine abuse and other drug abuse is a medical problem. Maybe there should be laws about it. I don't really know. I don't necessarily agree with the full decriminalization thing. I'd want to talk about it and learn about it more. It's not the point. The point is, it is at a minimum overemphasized anyway. So why should I care more about this instance? And that's where I land on this stuff. And this is why I hope you're watching. I know you're doing your own stream, so maybe you're not watching. This VOD will be up. You can figure it out. But in case you are that streamer who is watching, I hope that is clearer as to why I care, or why I don't care, and why I feel like it's not really that important to care, and why I don't think it's helpful to impugn people for not caring. What we care about is broader than that. This might be a singular instance. We can say, okay, prosecute him and move on. And then if you find that insufficient because he's not being prosecuted, cool. Lots of that stuff doesn't get prosecuted. We try to approach the broader system, not this one guy. Why should I care about this one guy? When remember, this whole thing is disingenuous from the outset. Nobody cares about it. They'll talk about it, but they don't care. The only reason they care is because they want to associate, in branding terms, the concept of the Biden crime family with voters, so that they will see this candidate, think, oh, he's a crime guy, which is hilarious in contrast with the previous president, whose history of crimes is extensive and well documented. But they want to associate that label there, one, to make it seem like, well, we're just all pointing fingers when you say the same about the Trump administration, the Trump campaign, and Trump himself, I should say. And two, so if you don't like crime, you go, well, why should I vote for crime? Remember, the Republican Party pretends to be the party of law and order. They're anything but they claim to be, somehow. And so that's why I don't care about this instance. Sure, it's a problem, I guess. Now we move on? Can we move on now? But what's being asked and demanded of me, generally, is that I do more than that. That I condemn. Why? If you're like the anti-crime guy, and someone points out to you, look, that guy jaywalked, do you need to condemn it? Is that really necessary? I would say no. Like, you can be like, okay, charge him or whatever. I don't think that crime's that big a deal. This isn't an instance of this isn't a particularly relevant instance of it. Remember, he's a guy. He's not in government. He doesn't have power. He has wealth. Charging him isn't going to fix those problems. I'm more interested if the people with power do things like this. And I'm more interested in fixing a system that allows for this. I don't really care about this one guy doing this one thing that isn't being prosecuted for it. Then prosecute him. What do you want from me? Is condemnation necessary? Why do I have to condemn the jaywalker? No, I don't think so. I can just say prosecute him and move on. So I hope that's I hope that's of interest to anyone who isn't aware of like my particular um, experience with discussing this. In the event that streamer is watching, I'd love to talk to you about it. In fact, I know we're both streaming right now, so um, I'm gonna check my see if he responded and if he wants to talk about it. No, he didn't. He's probably just busy with the stream. But in case you do watch it, I would be interested in talking with you more about this stuff if you are interested, because we've had a few disagreements in your chat, even though I think I I also know there's a difficulty in this conversation that comes up with a lot of other conversations, including the book that we just read, including this story, a bunch of other things, where people are pressed into positions by implication. That I am arguing from this position implies that the other person takes a contrary position, but maybe they don't, right? Maybe they take something that agrees with some parts and not others, so on and so forth. So, in case he sees this, those are my thoughts, and I'd love to talk to you about it. Otherwise, that's all I really got for today. I don't really have any plans for what to do tomorrow for the rest of the week. Maybe we'll just do a debate review or something. I still need to reach out about possibly getting some debates going because I would like to. But I hope this was fun for everybody. Finish the book. I will upload to YouTube as always in case you missed any part of it. But thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time. Bye.